Okay, fellow Truck Show podcast listeners, where we left you was right in the middle of our tour of AMSOIL's headquarters in Superior, Wisconsin. And we were going to pick up with the second half of our tour starting in just a moment. But first, we have to thank Nissan, the presenting sponsor of the Truck Show podcast. So if you're in the market for a mid-size pickup like the Nissan Frontier, or you want a full-size SUV like the Nissan Armada, head on over to nissanusa.com where you can build and price, find exactly the options and the features that will fit your lifestyle, or head on down to your local dealer for a test drive.
And since we're talking about lubrication this episode, got to talk about Banks' new Cool Runner oil pan for Duramax pickup trucks, 2017 to 2019 and 2020 plus. If you've got a Duramax truck, man, oh man, you hate high temps, and this is the way to cool them down. Also, the brand new Ram Air Trans Pan for all of the Allison transmissions 2001 to 2019. Head over to bankspower.com to grab yours.
And of course, this episode is also sponsored by our friends over at AMSOIL. So stay tuned because you're going to hear a lot more about the brand from the inside. But if you want to do a little research on your own, head on over to AMSOIL.com where you can find all the products and all the information that you need to pick out the best synthetic lubricant for your vehicle.
And before we get blown away outside of AMSOIL, because the wind is kicking up, we've got to talk about EGR. EGR is our friends who make absolutely amazing truck accessories, including window visors, fender flares, and the EGR roll track tonneau cover. Whether it's electric or manual, they have one for your pickup truck. Head over to EGRUSA.com to go shopping.
The Truck Show. We're gonna show you what we know. We're gonna answer what the truck, 'cause truck rhymes with the Truck Show. We have the lifted, we have the lowered, and everything in between. We'll talk about trucks that run on diesel and the ones that run on gasoline. The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
It's the Truck Show with your hosts, Lightning and Holman.
Looks like we're saying goodbye to Darren, VP of Production. You have been a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for the tour. Looks like you're dropping us off in the mechanical engineering lab.
Yep, you guys will have fun in there. They get to play with all the cool toys, unlike like us in manufacturing.
I don't know. I saw a lot of cool toys out there.
I would disagree. Yeah, I agree with Holman. You got some really neat stuff.
We have nice stuff. This is really fun, cool stuff. So you guys will enjoy this. They're going to walk you through some pretty cool things that they do. You know, you guys have already seen these really nice test mules that they're beating on and testing.
I got a Can-Am Maverick. We got another Razor. Got a lifted AMSOIL. Looks like a Duramax in the corner. Yeah, you got nice
a Harley behind you, all sorts of stuff in here.
Yep, and like I said, don't forget to ask them about the LS motor. That's a fun toy.
All right.
All right, thank you much.
Thank you guys.
See ya. Mark, long time no speak. How you doing?
Good, yeah.
Mr. Mark Nyholm, and now you're in charge of the mechanical engineering lab here at AMSOIL. Is that correct?
I recently turned that over back to our vice president because I moved on into a different position. But yes, I had managed this lab for about 5 years, 6 years.
So you know a little bit about it.
I know a thing or two.
Take us through everything from a Duramax diesel pickup truck here in the corner. I guess you guys are, I won't say too much, but I overheard that he's playing with an oil bypass system, some upgrades to a new oil bypass system.
We do a variety of things here, right? So it could be from small engines that we have on stand that we're doing really finite chemistry and validation work on, all the way to bringing a vehicle off the street that might be a customer's and diagnosing something that's going on with it, or using that truck to do some prototype development stuff like a bypass system like he's doing.
So what is this LS we keep hearing about? We keep hearing about we should ask you specifically about the quote-unquote no?
It makes,
yes?
It makes big power.
1,000 horsepower is what we're hearing.
It makes more than that.
Oh, really?
It does.
Okay.
Oh, there's a lot of questionable glances coming our way. Maybe we need to, do we have to stop this line of questioning?
I don't know. There's PR people off to our corner here, and they're looking
This
Lightning's
is public
handler.
already.
okay, all right.
This is public already.
So can we go into the dyno cell?
I mean, yeah, we can go in there.
Okay.
We can
We
go
allowed?
anywhere you want in here. It's your choice.
Hold on. There's engine parts abound in here. Do you want?
Looks like the transmission, the DCT from the Can-Am is sitting on
so
there.
we're standing in an area where we build up and tear down things, right? So everything that we do here, we measure. Nothing is subjective. It's always quantifiable, and that's the important thing about running a dynamometer facility like this is we don't just look at things and say, give it the old thumbs up. No, we actually measure things, which means when you buy something that's brand new, the first thing you do is tear it apart. You have to measure everything, and then you can build it back up, and then you have to send it out somewhere where it normally operates, like a side-by-side. It goes out in the field strapped with a whole bunch of data acquisition equipment to collect how the thing operates under, I'll say, normal use. Right, so the average person.
Finger air quotes there. Did you see that?
I mean, there was air quotes there. Normal, and I say normal very specifically because you always will say, "Well, I'm pretty heavy on the foot in my vehicle. Like nobody rides harder than I do."
Everybody does.
Okay, right. Everybody does, right? You don't think that the OEMs know that?
Yeah.
I mean, so we send it out in the field and we collect lots of data, and we do push it hard. So then we take that thing back and we analyze and synthesize that data so that we can take what we collected in the field and put it on a dyno. Because none of these things are built to run on a dyno. So you have to know how they operate in order to duplicate that in a dyno profile here to collect the data that you want to capture.
So are you basically taking the data acquisition that you would bolt on for the field, and then you can take all that data, load it into the dyno to replicate it in a controlled environment? Is that the idea?
100%,
Okay.
yeah. We want to run something that we measured out there in a very controlled environment here.
Got it.
So we control all the variables now. And then we can start dialing things up and down however we want to really test our lubricants. We're not here to put the equipment on test. That's what the OEM does, right? We're here to put our lubricants on test to make sure that when we say that it's good for it, it's good for it.
So things that like you'd normally see in a dyno cell would be like top end runs. You're not doing that because that's not realistic, right? You're blipping the throttle. Wow, wow, wow. Like you're in a turn, out of a turn, on and off throttle, things like that.
Our dyno profiles are tried to be much like how somebody would operate it outside. Now, you can't be perfect with that, right? Because as you're blipping through the woods or something, or you're in traffic, that on and off the throttle really fast is hard to do with a dyno. So we have ramp rates that we roll into the throttle and then we back off the throttle. And those ramp rates can be pretty quick, but they can't be exactly like your foot hammers on it. So we try to be as close as possible on the dyno based on what we collect out in the field. What we do in here is, most people think about a dyno as like, yeah, I'm gonna go put my my truck on it.
Well, that's a chassis dyno. Where the wheels are rolling on two rolling pins.
True.
Right?
But even engine dynos, like some guy builds a big monster and wants to make sure that it's put together right and then it can make a lot of horsepower before I actually put it in something before it goes down the track. But those are very quick horsepower sweeps. Like that's not what we do.
Yeah, you may be able to find out your peak torque and peak horsepower, but what is your usability? How is the vehicle in the middle of the rev range? How is it responding as you're using it? Because nobody's going out in the world and every time they use it is like a wide open throttle.
Well, some people do.
Well, but more importantly, you're probably doing these for hours on end, I would assume, right?
Yeah, that's the true difference. Is we're not just throttle sweeps. We're doing durability runs, and we may run something for 10,000 miles, on a motorcycle or something like that. So we're doing long-term testing. And the LS that you quickly brought forward, we ran that through 3 different profiles. We did just throttle sweeps, like full bore right to the floorboards many times over and over, like it would be if you're drag racing. Like track stuff is hot on the throttle for 1/8 of a mile, tops, 1/4 mile maybe, and then you're off the throttle. We did that 100 and some times, which was way beyond most people's racing season. But that's not it. So, it's more than just that. There's other things that you could do with that engine.
What about, for instance, when we were walking through the warehouse, there are stacks and stacks of marine motor oil. That's a very different use case. That is, when you go to the river, you pin the throttle, and then you sit back and you have a beer as you go across the lake. And then 15 minutes later, you pull back on the throttle. It's just pinned the whole time.
Right, and we do some of that stuff too, right? We'll load the thing heavy and just run it at high load cases for hours on end. We have engines in here that simply run at wide open throttle. We tape them off to control the heat, drive the heat up in the sumps, and they just run for hundreds of hours. So it's all depending on what we're trying to accomplish with the lubricant that's in the engine at the time.
Okay. So then are you doing the same thing with the factory spec lubricant and then you're rebuilding it, remanning it or whatever you have to do and then putting the AMSOIL lubricant and seeing what the same degradation or lack thereof is?
There's always a comparison, right? You're comparing your own performance to something. So what is the baseline? And everything out there, everything, but most things have an OEM recommended fluid. That's the baseline. So you're always going to compare yourself to that. And then sometimes we bring in other competitors that we specifically want to compare against for marketing purposes. You're always comparing to something.
All right, so let's go into the dyno cell. All right, through the big, heavy lead-lined doors. Oh, I see. Hold on. There's a rolling cart with pistons, rods, and then I see photographs being taken in a light box, which means that you're photographing evidence.
Evidence after test performance, right? So this is about as subjective as our analysis gets. And we do this so we can compare the before and after, mostly for the purposes of if we wanted to run many tests over and over and over and over and over, we could always compare what all these tests looked like from a visual perspective. But all these parts also get measured, and that's the objective piece. We're quantifying data, and the difference between any of those measurements is where?
The data that you care about as the engineer is, well, it's just that. It's data. You're looking at the numbers, the spreadsheet. You're looking at wear and pitting and all these other things, right? But as a consumer, the photographs that he's taking right now, those don't lie to my eyes. I go, oh, I don't want that. It looks bad. I buy AMSOIL.
Right, and many
Except for AMSOIL customers are way more sophisticated than that. So.
Than my caveman impersonation,
Yes.
but yes.
Yes, pictures are used because they're pretty and they can be used for marketing. I mean, if you run a test that's super abusive and we demonstrate that case and then you show a set of bearings at the end that look virtually like new, that's telling to the customer that we did our job right.
So then I see you've got multiple dyno cells. What's inside of them?
3 cells in this block?
Yes, we have 3 different cells. We can go on each one, and there's different capabilities within each cell.
Oh, okay.
That's why we have 3 different ones.
All right, where's the light switch?
So unfortunately for you, you guys get to see the aftermath of this test and not the LS that you were looking for.
Holy
So this is
mackerel.
a snow machine that's been completely obliterated.
Yeah.
Looks like a bomb went off on the inside of a snowmobile.
Well, this is a properly taken apart snow machine. When you say bomb go off, people are going to think it
fragged.
exploded.
Oh, no, it didn't at all.
Didn't do their job.
No, that's not what happened. There's just pieces of it.
Yeah. So here's the tough reality with today's sled technology. In order to get the engine out of the thing, you basically have to take the whole thing apart.
Is that because it uses the engine as kind of a piece of structural member?
Yeah, and they bury it to get the center of mass real low, and everything's got fuel injection on it now, and there's turbos, and there's coolant lines, and there's exhaust around, and lots of different electrical sensors and harnesses. Like, we used to take engines out of the chassis, we'd put them on the dyno, and we'd run them. But then it got too complicated. Like, there's too much technology and sensors and wires, and like everything you see dangling here would have to come out. It's too time prohibitive. So what we did is we built a table instead. We can buy sleds from any dealership, and we can virtually have them on test the same week. And the only reason it takes a little bit of time is because we have to take the primary off, we build an adapter, we hook it to a drive shaft to the dyno, and we run the thing as is.
Yeah, so I mean, this engine, I guess you would call this transverse mounted, right? Because it's belt driven, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then instead of a belt, you're just running the prop shaft straight out the side of the snowmobile, kind of below where your left knee would be.
Yeah, where the primary is just running a shaft rather than a belt back to
right
the drive.
into your dyno, right, into your Superflow absorber over here.
Exactly.
What tests specifically were you running on this Turbo 137?
So what we're testing is our lubricants in this particular engine. So this is a 4-stroke engine, and it's a new model year that's out there. We do this a lot. We buy new model year stuff from the OEMs, and we run our oils in it. We beat them up to the profiles that we've established that we know taxes our oil to prove that the OEM didn't come out with something new, or they didn't do something different that we need to be aware of when we put our oil and recommend our oil for these things.
Gotcha.
So when you said the 3 cells have different capabilities, one is this one has the table in it for the power sports equipment, or what's the difference with 2 and 3?
Right. Well, I'd say back that up even to this has the Superflow.
Okay.
Right. So we can adapt this cell to run lots of things that we can connect to the Superflow.
Got it.
In this case, sleds are easy because we have built this table. I mean, the LS just came off this same dyno not too long ago. So it has the capability of running things like you see here as opposed to really high horsepower LS builds like we put together.
Got it.
Cell 1, down. Cell 2, rolling into.
Oh, completely different.
Oh, very different. Light switch over here.
Yep. So in here we have two different capabilities.
I see leaf blowers. Ah.
You see a lot of little small engines. We use these engines for, again, small tweaks in chemistry that we'll make based on maybe something that's new that's come out that we want to evaluate. We have about 10 years of history on these little small engines. I believe these are new Kohler ones that we're trying to investigate whether they can replace the Honda platform that we have been using. But we've been using that Honda platform for 10 years. We know probably more about that platform than Honda does because we've run thousands of them. What we'll do is we'll set up a bank of 6, 3 and 3. So 3 of them will have the new thing that we're evaluating in oil. The other 3 will have the known good baseline chemistry. And we're always comparing what's changed, which is something we did to the oil, to the baseline. We'll run them for, depends on the profile of what we're trying to evaluate. Sometimes it's 300 to 400 to 500 hours, wide open throttle, nonstop. We usually control the amount of heat that goes into it by taping off the vents to try to drive the heat up, into the 200 and the 300 degrees range. And then at the end, we tear them apart, we look at them, we see what the difference of the performance is, and then they end up going to scrap.
So looking at this dyno cell, you've got the Honda now come Kohler small engines,
Maybe, yeah.
and you've got the small engine oil on there. What's the difference between what a small engine needs in terms of lubrication versus a regular motor vehicle engine out of a car? Is it air-cooled versus water-cooled? Is it anything else?
You hit the big one. So the big one's air-cooled versus water-cooled.
Okay.
Any car on the road has a big radiator and a thermostat that controls it to, let's just for argument's sake, call it 200 degrees. Pretty typical. Air-cooled engines, there's nothing on it that controls it to any temperature other than the load that you're putting on it and the ambient temperature operating it in.
Right.
So up here, let's say it's 70 degrees in the summer, not so bad, right? But if you're in Texas and it's 120 degrees, you're already at a 50-degree delta. Now you put that same load on it, well, that thing may see 280, 290, 300 degree oil temps, which is cooking. Much different than the car on the road that's controlled to 200.
So is it safe to say that that oil is designed to not cook off as quickly and last at higher temperatures, and then I guess a different additive package?
Yeah, lots of different additives, and there are a lot for oxidation resistance. So as you pour heat to the oil and you add oxygen in it, it wants to oxidize and thicken. So we do a lot of work to try to maintain viscosity over time, given an engine that's going to run that hot. We also know that people don't treat those types of applications
really
with the
well.
same scrutiny that they do with their car or something that they absolutely love.
It gets thrown in the shed and they hurt it. They run it to the point where it's going to die. They just toss it in the shed.
I think I had a lawnmower for 20-something years that never saw an oil change.
And that is really typical. We are a consume and dispose society.
Yeah.
And a lot of times our maintenance is pretty particular to that method, which if it's missing oil, we top it off.
Yeah,
but
right.
I don't drain the oil.
Yeah,
Just
why
let
would
it
you do
burn
that?
some and add some more.
All right, what's next?
Cell 3.
And outside I see ATV, UTV oil. Is that just a coincidence? Oh,
You happen to be here at a time when the machines that you saw outside torn down just came out of here.
okay.
So we have a roller dyno here that's capable of up to in size to big ATV or big UTVs. So we run motorcycles, whether they're on-road, off-road, or a variety of different UTVs in here. Same deal. All that stuff has to go outside to collect data. We bring it in here, we strap it to the roller, and then we put it through its paces. Here, the difference is we get a little bit of drivetrain exercise as well, because the power's got to go through from engine, through transmission, differential, to wheels, to roller, and that's what's going to resist the torque. So we get some drivetrain fluid exercising and testing as well.
Gotcha. How much of your job is paperwork, like just Excel spreadsheets, just pouring over data, versus running engines and making noise?
Well, I mean, from a technician perspective, they get all the fun to make the noise and watch the test. Like, from an office job perspective, it's a lot of analysis, right? We want to make sure that what we capture out in the field is valid. We want to make sure that once we put it on the dyno, we're mimicking what we do out in the field, and that the data we're collecting in here is valid. I mean, we look at data from a day-to-day basis to make sure that there's not some sort of anomaly or trend that's happening that we don't want to see. And if we do see some sort of trend, we start to reel back and say, well, why? We are always asking ourselves why? Because that's our business. I mean, we want to make sure that when we run a test, the variable under test is our oil, not something else that we're missing as part of the equipment that's changing over time. We don't want to impact the results that we would get from our oil based on something that's happening in the drivetrain, for example.
When you fall asleep at night, do spreadsheets enter your nightmares? It's all about numbers and Excel columns.
PTSD.
That's kind of my life, actually. Mechanical engineer by trade, so I think it started at a young age.
So now, is everything in your house operate by spreadsheet as well? Is there,
definitely homestead finances, for sure. But we do have some fun, right? I mean, all that stuff we talked about going out in the field, well, although we like to say it's very diligent and we're collecting data, you're still outside,
Yeah.
not sitting in the
At
office
a
and
desk,
you're driving
yeah.
something or doing something.
bugs in your teeth, ready to go?
Well, let me ask you this. So speaking of that, how much data are you collecting and how much data acquisition equipment do you have installed on racers' vehicles, whether it's like a Scott Birdsall top speed car or it's an off-road buggy, that type of thing?
So before we invested in this facility, that's how we did business, right? We used to partner with commercial businesses, race teams, you name it. But the problem with that method is that time is it's too long.
Yeah.
I mean, a race team only competes a couple times a month maybe, or a few times a year. And you could wait an entire year to get a whole season's worth of race data. We can do this. We can run this facility 24/7. We can do the same thing in a week. So it completely collapses our timeline in terms of trying something new and determining whether that was successful or not. Now, we still use race teams. We still collect data from them, and it's great data. But we can do things a whole lot faster here.
I'm sure too you see trends in the marketplace as far as how guys are using the equipment too by teaming with race teams, right? Like if King of the Hammers or something is exploding, that's maybe they're using a vehicle in a different way than you had been used to, and now you can make a chemical kit for them.
Well, I would say that the thing that you guys probably know, and most other people would, is that horsepower is going up, right? So, 10 years ago, anything that was on the road is not the same as it was today. And it's because we care more about power than maybe we care about fuel mileage. So when we build lubricants... USA! When we build lubricants, what used to be a 200-horse engine is now a 350-horse engine. And you need to make sure that your product...
And direct injected and turbocharged and add all the other things too as well, right?
Right. It's all those additional technology advancements that we need to be able to make sure we can protect from the guy on the right foot. Really.
Especially on DI, right? DI gas engines have a completely different signature than a regular indirect injected dual overhead cam engine. And you've got some of the challenges with emissions and soot and things like that you would have with a diesel engine. So you have to start taking into an account today's newer engines and maybe even formulate a gasoline style oil to mimic more of some diesel properties.
Yeah, the impacts of technology on oil from a byproducts of combustion perspective are super important. As you're getting those byproducts getting into the sump, I need to manage those. As we get unburnt fuel from that into the sump, I need to manage that. As the horsepower goes up, I need to manage that additional load. We're always tweaking to go beyond what technology is at today, because we don't want to be right on the edge where it can happen, and we need to be beyond that, right?
Yeah. Okay, one more question. I think Holman was dying to ask you about diesel oils. At what point do you graduate from max duty to Dominator?
So basically, we know there's Dominator competition diesel oil, which is a big deal, especially I'm dynoing, I'm racing, I'm doing all those kind of things. And I know that you guys have designed it so that you can have it through multiple events at a competition without having to do an oil change. But how does it differ for the guy that is driving, using his truck, working it every day, some sort of a hauler, a hot shot? Where do you go? What's the right choice?
You kind of answered a whole bunch of that question just by going through it, actually. And it's really based on what you're doing with the truck and how frequently you're doing it.
So it's not a horsepower level then?
It can be, but I mean, a lot of daily drivers aren't running around with 1,500 horse under the hood. I mean, they're just not. I mean, that's a truck that somebody's going to use for a particular purpose. It's either at the track or something other than that, right? We have segregated it based on horsepower, where we usually say if you're less than 1,000 horse, you can run our max duty stuff and you'll be just fine. If you're over 1,000 horse, you start looking at our competition diesel, or you look at our Dominator product. And we have customers that run all the way up to 3,000 horse on our Dominator stuff, and it's great. But it's the frequency in which you're doing stuff like this. Can somebody run our Dominator in a daily driver? Well, you could, but it's way overbuilt for what you're gonna need.
So
on
it's overkill at that point.
But it won't hurt the engine, obviously. They're spending more money than maybe they need to.
Yeah, I mean, if it makes you feel good, that's great, but you don't need that. Like, our max duty has great capabilities up to 1,000 horse, and that's pretty much everybody that's driving around on the road. If you're saying off-road, well, now we have some different options for you, and now horsepower does matter. So competition diesel that we have as a 2050, we'll say, well, that's great to like 1,500 maybe 2,000, and then anything over that, we push them right into our Dominator series.
Okay,
Proven
and
performance up to 3,000 for sure.
And so what is
What
different?
if I'm at 3,001 horsepower?
Shut up.
Well,
What makes the
I have a
difference?
product for you.
What makes the difference? How is that Dominator different? What does the horsepower do to the oil package?
So it's load, right? So it's load on bearings. So you need a very robust viscosity, because that viscosity, that film, is this difference between metal to metal contact. And if I break my film, I need additives in order to be my belt and suspenders approach before metal to metal contact happens.
Your buffer.
So, right. So my package is extremely robust in viscosity and film thickness to be able to manage the load, and at those impact
Really
load
sounds
times,
like a Lightning's package. Very similar.
I was going to say, that's what she said.
That HR's right on the other side of that door, right there.
And in those times in which you have impact loadings, now we're talking very robust additives to be able to maintain that separation between metal to metal contact. Our Dominator product is super robust in those two things.
Which explains why I saw so much AMSOIL at the Ultimate College Challenge just a couple of months ago.
Absolutely. Those guys are all running, north of 1,500 to 2,000 horse.
And we saw it at Diesel Power Challenge back in the day. Rest in peace.
So that is all three dyno cells here. All right, are we off to talk to Len next?
You're going to go spend some time with Len Grew.
All right.
Great guy, loves power sports.
All right.
So I've known these guys since my magazine days, especially Len, a lot of Diesel Power Challenge stuff. So,
The bald guy down there?
I mean that is strapping Adonis at the end of the dyno cell hallway. Yes.
Let's go say that to his face.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Love you, mean a long time. This is not the great Len Groom, is it?
Hello, how are you doing? It is. And I don't like the great part.
Oh, you don't like the great?
No, just-
Fantastic.
You could just stick to Len.
Semi-good, Len?
I would just call it average, personally. Average only. Yeah.
So apparently you and Mr. Holman over here have known each other for some years.
I've been at AMSOIL for 15 years. I've known Mr. Holman all 15 of
Yeah,
those
I
years.
think because when you first came on at AMSOIL, one of your, within the first year, I think we worked together on some events, and you came out to our old Orange County office in Irvine, maybe NPMC or something like that?
No, it was Top Truck.
Geez, even further back, yeah.
It
Top
was,
Truck
it was
before.
TTC that I got
yeah.
here, and they said, hey, we need you to go to California. There's an event we
Yeah,
sponsor.
that's right.
Since I knew a couple things about
I totally forgot about that because I was
The
thinking
mechanical
about
side,
Diesel
yeah.
Power Challenge, which we also did. So I remember AMSOIL signed up for Diesel Power Challenge, and like, oh, we're sending Len out. I'm like, oh, yeah, I already know Len.
So, Len, what is your title and duty here at AMSOIL?
I am the product marketing manager, power sports, and power equipment.
Okay. And so do you spend more time at the office or at races and supporting your team?
I would say it's a kind of a mixed bag. We work, the area that I work in, it's similar to, areas that there's several of me. that work here, and we kind of break up the different markets. So I fall under power sports, which at AMSOIL is racing as well. So I have the racing oils. We have a hand in what products that we're launching in any of those areas. So if I speak to power sports, it's because that's what I do. So it's what products, what's the look and feel, pricing. We work with product development to develop, here's what we're looking for, here's our major competitors, these are some key areas that we need to build technology for, and then work with marketing to build that plan based on some of those key technological parameters. So, and then I also have a hand in some of the testing. In this mechanical lab, you're going to find there's a lot of power sports equipment. I've got a hand in test design, what the results look like, how we shape the message, and then in certain situations, I actually end up on some of the videos.
So how has the technology for oil changed in the power sports market? Because it's completely different from 10 years ago. Turbos and different types of going from CVTs and belts to, DCT transmissions, or on and on and on.
It's changed quite a bit in the time just that I've been here. We used to be able to, borrow different formularies from different areas of the company that would be, maybe pass car related or heavy duty related. Now it's become very, very specialized, where you not only have to buy the equipment, test it, because the OEM isn't going to help you. We're looked at as a competitor.
Sure.
You need to buy the equipment, test it, figure out, what is its appetite for oil, as we say, and then design the product to meet those needs. And in certain situations, we find weak spots in the OEM oil, and then we can exploit that, through marketing. And ultimately, it's a benefit to the consumer because it'll last longer, run cooler. You can do more cool things with it. Because as you buy a dirt bike, you buy a UTV, first thing you do is go and do everything you're not supposed to do with it, right? So you're
100%.
gonna beat the heck out of it.
And by the way, the UTVs are so expensive these days. I mean,
and you have to buy the trailer and the tow rig on top of it.
It was only 15 years ago when, like, the Rhino, right? The Yamaha Rhino came out, and it was kind of that was the gold standard, and it would do 40 miles an hour at best, or something like that. And now the guys are doing 100, and they're $60,000, like, fully loaded. It's nuts.
Yeah. And you want to keep the thing alive as long as you can. You want it to work for you when you need it to work is kind of the big deal. So it's to everybody's benefit to build a product that's designed to work in those pieces of equipment. And what we run into in these, dirt bike would probably be the best example. Very small amount of oil that's required to do a really big job. So there's 1.5 quarts of oil in some of these dirt bikes, and it's, what are they making for horsepower? Supercross bike making 50 horsepower, 60 horsepower. You can clear a triple with one burp of the throttle. So there's hardly any oil in there. So it means it has to go through the engine and do its job over and over and over so many times faster than if you had 15 quarts, or even 4. So you've got to build for the oil to cycle like that, to also take those kind of heat, those heat cycles that it can handle, high temperatures, a lot of shear stress, tons of pressure on the bearings. They've ditched the roller bearings in some of these things, and now they've gone flat bearings because they know there's power there. Again, that's film strength. Oil has to bear that load, of that technological change to get the bike to make more power.
What's the benefit to, going back to, we were talking off air, but a property owner who has a bunch of side-by-sides, motorcycles, things that maybe run once a month. Owner goes out there, parks his diesel truck or whatever, and he's on his side-by-side or dirt bike or his ATV running around the property, and then the thing gets parked. It's stored, it's sitting there, it's hot temperatures, it's cold temperatures. He expects it to fire up right away and do all the work every time. Their benefit to the AMSOIL product for that consumer, and then, like, how often should those people be doing oil changes? Is it by hours? Is it by time? What's different in the power sports market from a guy who might be used to doing his own oil changes on the consumer truck side?
Well, we started in the power sports area by putting no specs on anything, right? So there's not a API SL or a CJ4 or certain things. The best spec we can come up with in power sports to a certain degree is the JSO MA2, which is your frictional characteristics that we use to build anything that has a wet clutch. Outside of that, there's not really like a spec that we could build something to. So an industry standard, we know that we can build it inside of this vis range. With these additives, it'll do this. Everybody's got something specific. You have to go out there and understand the equipment. So we have to get it, build it. We have a general knowledge of how to build an oil for a 4-stroke engine.
Sure.
But then you start tweaking on it. So all of the things you talked about, lots of on-off or short trips. You're putting fuel in there. You're putting condensation in there. It's sitting. It's a 4-stroke engine. The exhaust valves can't stay closed, so something has to be open and exposed to atmosphere. So you have to figure all of that stuff out, and then you build for it. So there's only so much room on the surface. What that means, so the molecular surface, there's only so many places you can put.
You know what? You're saying this, and I don't even think anyone considers that when they just turn the engine off, there's a valve open, there's a valve closed, there's a valve, and it is exposed to moisture, to temperature, to everything. And those valves are and I also don't think that people understand how fast the valves are moving and what they're being asked to do, and the gases that they're asked to pass through. I don't think
that's why I think a quality oil makes sense, especially in those use cases that aren't in every day. Something sitting as a piece of equipment, right?
Exactly. So you have to figure that out, and then you have to adjust the product, right? So there's a base type product that we can build. Like if you want a 1040, we can build you a 1040, but then we leave some room there to adjust. If we know that it's going to sit, we'll add some rust and corrosion inhibitors in there. We'll add some, if we know that it's ultra hot, like an air-cooled application, we can put in more, we can add detergent dispersant type additives to keep the deposit control, to add some deposit control to it. So we can tweak it in different areas based on what the oil is going to do. And that's really what the fun part about this whole thing is.
And with the dispersant, that keeps kind of things suspended in the oil so that they pass through the filter and not sit in the sump and basically cause a bunch of sludge in the bottom.
Right. You want to keep it off the surface, dump it in the filter. That's the key. Get it in the filter. Control soot. Get it to move to the filter. That's what it's there for. Keep your filter, use a decent filter. Get everything in there. Don't let it collect or coagulate inside that engine, right? So you have antioxidants, dispersant, detergent package all work kind of in conjunction to do that. Keep it from forming. If it does form, get it in the oil filter.
So one of the things I've kind of been interested about is filters. So you guys make your own filters in AMSOIL, and so you can include it in, when you buy your oil, whatnot. But a lot of these filters are pretty small microns. How small are the molecules of the additives? When oil is passing through a filter, obviously you're able to pick up soot, metallic pieces, things like that. Are you ever picking up additives or anything that you don't want the filter to pick up, or are those so small they're always passing through?
That's a good question, and I think that's interesting to people because I've asked that question myself. The answer to the question is about 5 microns. Once you hit the 5 micron range, so the human eye can see about 5 microns. So if it's shiny in the filter, you can assume that's bigger than 5 microns. Once it gets under that, you get to oil analysis. You get to about the 3 micron range. Now you have to start worrying about additives. So if you get most filters are going to play in that 5 micron range. That'll get the job done for soot and different things like that. But 3, 2, now you start worrying about additive removal because they will be certain additives. And again, leave me a lot of room here.
Yeah.
Certain additives can get grabbed in that filter. So you watch yourself, start around 3 microns, then you have to be careful.
At a certain point, do you inhibit the actual passing of the oil through it? I mean, if you get too small, too fine.
That's the cool part, is you can get a media, and we have that here. You get a media that's highly efficient, so it'll flow really well, but it'll also filter really well. So you add more pleats. So you open up an extended type filter, you'll see more pleats.
It's all about surface area.
More surface area. That's all it is. So you want a low micron filter that still will filter, right? I don't want a 5 micron at 60% efficiency, right? Part of it's going out through the bypass. You want 90s on your efficiency rate. That means 90% of the oil is being filtered.
I didn't think about the use case for power sports. Like a lawnmower, it might sit for months. I know we've touched on this quite a few times, but most of our listeners drive their truck every day. There are some guys that use it only to haul a boat once in a while, things like that.
But they all have lawnmowers, motorcycles,
I understand that. That's
UTVs.
what I'm talking about. Is it's such these two crazy extremes where you have to build one additive package, one oil to do so many things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really specialize in is like I've already hit this like a couple times, is really to understand that motor's appetite. But then there are some that if you build for a worst case scenario, it'll cover you for many others. So I'll give you an example. It's very difficult to build oil for an air-cooled motor such as your lawnmower, because what happens there, right? You've got an air cooling, a fan that's questionable at best on the flywheel. It gets clogged with grass. Lord forbid you clean it.
It's in the dust stream.
Yeah, it's just jammed full of everything. Yeah. So your sump temperatures on a lawnmower far exceed some temperatures on many gas applications.
And you may never change the oil on your lawnmower.
Right, and then who changes it?
No
you
one.
Kick it in the garage, maybe check it if you're lucky, add if it needs it.
Bit,
So we start a lot of times there. That's a worst case scenario. So if you can formulate for a small engine, air-cooled small engine, you've done something with your additive and your antioxidant. Base oils play a large role there as well. The better the base oil, the less Band-Aids and fluff you have to use to make it do something, right? Because good base oils inherently do a lot of jobs well. And you don't have to patch it up with things such as viscosity modifiers and antioxidants, right? Those are a big Band-Aid as well. Antioxidants are required for formulary, but you use a good base oil, you can use slightly less because you're not trying to work so hard to keep the oil from oxidizing in those hot spots like around the valves.
So two questions, Len. First, we hear that you had a hand in analyzing all of the engine parts that are disassembled outside that used to be in these dyno cells. Can you tell us what you found, what you were looking for and what you found?
A lot of what you're looking at out there, given whatever piece of equipment it was, we run something called a proof of performance. So in certain situations, we'll call it an extreme proof of performance, where we'll buy a specific piece of equipment, we'll take it out on the trail, fully sensor the thing, and then understand how it runs in the wild, if you will. Drive it like a normal person would drive it. We're not trying to break it. Have we taken them to the racetrack? Yes. Have we done hill climbs? Yes. But then mix that in also with some recreational type driving. How are you going to use your Polaris Razor Turbo? Okay, if I can use a brand name on this show. And that's one of the pieces of equipment that's out there. So what we're looking at is you run it for an oil change interval. So that's what we did. And then we take it apart and we look at it and we make decisions on
What are you measuring, first off?
everything that you can imagine. Bearing clearances.
Rings.
Everything. Rings. We're looking at depositing, what the deposit looks
Bore
like.
wear.
We'll get a rating on it. We've got a profilometer that runs down the bore, so we're actually looking at how the ridges look inside there.
Are you putting some of the stuff under microscopes as well?
Well, the profilometer in a cylinder will get you what you're looking for. It gives you your profile of what the bore looks like, as you, I'm sure, know. So that really tells the tale on if the ring pack is wearing, or if the oil's not doing its job on the cylinder liner. You'll see the peaks and valleys start to shrink. You lose your oil, lose your compression. You start to wear it out. So we're always looking heavily there, and we'll use that tool for that. Not so much microscope based. It's more precision measuring tool, like you would see at an engine shop.
Did you see anything that surprised you, or do you ever? Like,
Or
oh
there
my
are
God.
trends with the new engines are higher stress, higher power, turbocharged now. There's a lot of high performance trickling down from cars and traditional vehicles into power sports right now.
You know what we've seen a ton of is these turboed vehicles, fuel dilution. You wouldn't think that, especially considering they hold 3 and 4 quarts of oil, which isn't a ton considering the power they're outputting.
A lot bigger than a motorcycle, though.
So fuel, for those who don't understand, like me, fuel is getting past the rings?
It's getting in there somehow, most likely, yes, past the rings.
And then sitting in the sump with the oil.
Yep, it collects in the sump. Doesn't get hot enough to boil it all off, so then it starts accumulating in there. So once we do our samples throughout the test, we start watching fuel dilution. We're seeing some of these things in the 3 and 4 and 5% range. 5's bad.
That's a lot.
5 is bad, right? The test doesn't go.
So
a
you're
ton
saying
higher.
5% of all the oil that's in the sump, it has fuel in it?
Nope, 5% of all the liquid in the sump is fuel.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah,
You're 100%
so basically
correct.
now you're only getting 95% of the performance that
Yep.
you should have gotten when
Everything
you first
gets
did oil
diluted.
change.
Everything is now thin,
Yeah.
so you start to see your additives drop. You start to see the viscosity go away. But what you look at, sometimes there's nothing we can do about that. It's a stock piece of equipment. It's going to fuel dilute. It is what it is. So what you start watching is the wear metals. If they don't go up, the oil's doing its job. As soon as the wear metals, you see fuel dilution go up. If you see the wear metals climb, the oil is not doing its job. at
And
that
wear
point.
metals is the
Wear
oil
metals
analysis
are-
where
you're
you're
looking
picking
at-
up all the little pieces and
Yes, sir.
shards and where the shiny stuff that
Yep,
comes off.
you're looking at cylinder liner, most importantly. You're looking at bearings and what makes up the bearings. Those are the 2 key pieces that we'll see inside that are wear metals. As you would with a car engine,
Yeah.
it's the same basic design. You see those start climbing, you got problems. So we've seen some really bad fuel diluters. We've not seen wear metals, right? So that's something that we kind of talk about in the proof of performance. It's like, yeah, it'll take the fuel dilution and doesn't wear it out. So it's nothing to be concerned with.
So you can formulate the oil with a special additive package where fuel dilution at 5% doesn't hurt the oil in terms of lubricity and its ability to do its job.
Yep, it comes down to your choice of, it really does. It comes down to your choice of quality tools, and you start with the base oil. So you put a really good base oil in there. You use high quality additives. You use vis modifiers that are very, very robust if you have to use them. So all of the chemistry, you're making choices. It's like building an engine, right? As you make the choices to build the higher end engine, the price tag goes up. It's the same thing with oil, but it's also a trade-off. You're never going to get everything perfect, right? You have to skew it certain different directions. So again, it's about that piece of equipment's appetite. If it's a fuel diluter, we know that. We'll start looking at the base oils, making sure we're using really good, robust base oils in there. So we know that the film strength, because that's what starts failing, is the film that the oil is building, whether it's pressurized or not, starts to be compromised
So
when you
what we're-
pour fuel in it.
What we're talking about too on film is you're running the engine. Obviously, a film is coating the parts that are helping for metal pieces to slide by each other. But film also has a level of stiction. So after the vehicle's turned off and everything's dripping down into the oil pan or whatever, there's still some oil film that's kind of left behind so that you're not starting metal on metal in an engine. So
There's a
that's
certain
important
amount
too,
left
right?
behind. Yeah, we look at that. There are different additives that would have the tenacity to hang around, so it'll stay in there on the part. If you leave oil sit long enough, gravity will
Yeah.
take its toll. I mean, it'll come out of there, right? But there we can influence that to a certain degree. But for the most part, the oiling systems are designed that as soon as you hit the key, it's pressurized. You know, a lot of times that's why you're seeing, you know, in power sports, we've seen a move towards the 5s and the 0s to a certain degree. And a lot of that has to do with getting it up to pressure quickly because it's going to move faster than a 20, even a good synthetic.
Yeah.
0 weight versus a 20 weight, that 0 is going to move quicker. You know, and in the days of, you know, you start it and go, you're better protected with a 0.
I just did an oil change on my son's 2016 Scion TC, 020 weight. And I guess it's a thing. I have never used 020 on a car before. And I was
Most
like,
hybrids are 0 now.
are they really? I was like, it's not that the 0 it was like capped at a 20. Like I was really surprised how it's like,
It's pretty common
is it really?
for efficiency, basically.
I mean, it's like a sewing machine.
Correct. And the problem with that is the move to 0s is okay.
It's the move down to 20.
Well, you start looking at the spread. Anytime you make that spread wider, so if you get to a 050, which we have, you have to have some very high-end juice in there, as we call it, to make sure that it's going to be robust, because it would have a tendency, anytime you stretch the vis that far, it has a tendency to lose its viscosity real quick. So you put it in as a 50, you run it a little while, turns into a 40 to a 30, real quick it starts falling down the hill.
Kind of goes off a cliff
Right.
on a
You can
crack.
heavily influence that with base oil selection. The problem is behind that comes pricing. So you got to make sure you got the room to be able to do that. But yeah, our 020, and I can speak to the pass car world a little bit, the 020 is starting to edge in, and the 520s are edging in on our
1040s
flagship
and
530.
Okay.
Yeah, the flagship 530 is losing some ground to the
So you're starting to
zeros.
see that market share ramp up as those newer
seeing
cars
it.
coming
Yeah,
online.
and I think that's just because you're seeing, you know, the car park is aging, and
But that's
and it's
actually good
sliding
for
over.
you as AMSOIL because it shows that people with newer cars are putting your product in it.
Possibly.
You know, because otherwise, if you didn't see that switch, people were just like, whatever. You know?
True. I think that, you know, the OEMs hold a lot of influence over what viscosities you're going to put into that. I can speak to from the power sports side of it is the OEMs hold all the power. People are going to put in there what they require. And we've given up on trying to switch people's thinking a long time ago. It's better off, hey, let's just build one that works really well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk you into a 1040. I'll build you a 0 that's as tough or better than that 10 that
But
they're
it might be a little bit
recommending.
more expensive, but it's also going to last longer and be a more quality oil and
Yeah,
all those
at the end of the
things.
day, when you're keeping your vehicle longer, whether it's power sports or not, if you use a quality piece, it doesn't really matter if it's a 0 as long as it's a quality. It's going to last longer.
Yeah.
So am I hearing that if I'm trying to stretch the viscosity at a 040 or something like that, or a 1060, which I think little Eric at my, like he has a BMW M3, and I think it's got 1060, which it's racing oil, and it's expensive, and I'd also never seen before. But when you stretch it that far, do you need to change it more often because you're asking more of the oil?
No, you wouldn't. No, it's just that engine's appetite. It wants the oil pressure fast, but then at the end of the day,
Needs durability.
when it's up to operating temperature, so as you guys may or may not know, oil has to get to 212 F to make its actual rated viscosity. Somebody probably told you that today.
You did.
You did right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Len.
So you have to get the oil to 212 degrees because that's the industry standard. It's actually 100 C. So if we speak in C or F, it doesn't matter. 100 C, 212 F is what your oil viscosity, that's where it makes its viscosity. On either side of that, now it really depends on how you've built the product. You get it hotter, some are going to hang on longer. It'll stay at 50. You get it to 300 degrees, eventually they will all fall off the cliff. They're going to start dropping.
So most
50, 40, 30.
synthetics. So we talked about it a little bit, but I think you're kind of delving more into it. So I'll bring it back up again. A lot of vehicles today run at oil temps of 220, 230 from the factory, normal every day. A lot of new vehicles require synthetics for that reason, and so they're running those higher temperatures for emissions. So a lot of people who maybe haven't bought a new car in, let's say, 12 or 15 years, they're used to 180, 200, and they're seeing on the coolant temp, and they're seeing low 200s on oil, and now today you're 220, 230 on coolant and 240, 50, 60 sometimes on some of the really new vehicles on oil temp. So I get a lot of people emailing me or DMing me or asking me, they're like, hey, something's wrong with my new Jeep Wrangler.
They feel uncomfortable.
Something's wrong with my new, whatever car. And they're like, it's running at 250. And I'm like, that's fine. And most, from what I understand, synthetic oils hang around until about 280, 285 or so before they start breaking down, which is why most of the new cars require a synthetic from the factory before you can get away with a blend or a conventional. Is that true?
Well,
What's the insight to that?
Here's the thing on that. I can't speak to other people's, the way they construct the oil, but it has a ton to do with, and you go back to this, the quality of base oil that you're going to build will move that temperature around. If you start, mixing in different group 3s and different things like that, yes, the temps will move. You use a really good high quality, let's say PAO for that example, like a group 4, group 5 ester, right? The super exotic boutique stuff. That's going to hang on into the 300s. Depending on how you've put it together. And again, give me some room on this. I don't want to get hung out to dry, but the better base oils you use, the higher temps you can get away with. But you're exactly correct. These cars are running hotter for longer, and that's just demanding a synthetic. If you put a low rent conventional in something like that, you're back to changing oil at 3,000 miles or less, and who recommends that anymore?
Probably going to be
Nobody.
really dark too.
We're all, especially in the diesel world, we're 5 to 7,500 in the gas world now. So you could never get away with that. You'd turn the whole thing black. You'd see these sludges, like you guys have seen the videos when they lift the valve covers and it's all jelly. That's oxidized oil, or it's an antifreeze leak. It's one of the two.
One of the two.
Yeah,
but
one of the two. But the real black caramel look. That's oxidation.
I guess my point too is, with manufacturers recommending synthetic out of the gate, that leaves more room for people to, or I guess another reason to go to AMSOIL, right? Because maybe in the past, like, well, I don't really need a synthetic. Well, now you need a synthetic, so you might as well go out and get a much better synthetic than what you might otherwise have chosen. And you certainly don't want to go back to conventional on a new vehicle that requires synthetic, because they're not just trying to gouge you at the dealer or something like that. It really requires it because these engines are running so much hotter, and I don't know that everybody takes that into account or understands that.
Your problem's down the road if you oxidize up a motor by using cheap oil, not changing your oil on time, just really going low rent. You're just asking for trouble. We were talking earlier, what does it cost to do phasers on a Gen 2 EcoBoost? There's $3,000 out the window. A turbo that you've got all coked up and won't work anymore, there's $5,000.
And there's a lot of cars and trucks where you have to pull the body off to get to the turbo.
Right. Realistically, you could save yourself some money by changing your oil. Using a good synthetic in many of those engines can make them last longer, right? It's the oxidation that kills you. LTs, they've got cam phasers, and they have minimum and maximum pressures that they can work under. If you get the oil too hot, you get an engine light, because the oil, as we were talking about earlier, the pressure starts to drop as the oil gets thin. The car knows that, and it's going to light you up for that. So you really got to use a decent synthetic product now.
So we keep hearing about this mystery LS engine. Every time we say it, either somebody smiles or somebody nods their head or shakes their like somebody's like, I want to tell you about it, and then somebody else over here is
nods and says, maybe not.
No.
So part of what I do, as we talked about earlier, is
have fun.
Yeah, we get to have we have some fun around here. Yeah, we do, as you guys have seen, right?
Yeah.
And I get to be involved in it because of the job that I do, being power sports and racing. We decided we wanted to come after, that LS crowd. It's like, let's build an engine and do something fun with it.
But that's such a small audience. Oh wait, boo, massive.
I know, and that's the thing. It kills me because I've told people this before, so I'll tell you guys. If you really just let me pick, I probably would have picked a Ford, right? And I can get crucified for that. But at the end of the day, we make choices based on the market, right? So you have to look at an LS. So
it's LS the world.
Yeah, it's an LS3. Yeah. So we built an LS3. It's like, what can we do to this thing? Everyone's already done 1,000 horsepower. What can we do with this thing? So what we decided to do was, let's build 1,000 horse, but then let's drive it around, right? Let's do something to it. So what we decided we wanted to do is we were going to race it as much as the average enthusiast would race it in a season. Then we were going to autocross it as much as an average enthusiast would do that in a season. And then we were going to, what's your average grocery getter guy that has 1,000 horsepower under the hood do with his car in a season? We lumped that all into one dyno program in one engine and did that to it on the dyno. So we drove it around, we put huge hits on it, a pile of hits, that full 1,000 horse dyno hits on it. And we drove it around a track. We simulated a couple different tracks. We were able to collect some data. there was so much power there, we had to actually tune it down slightly because most autocross cars aren't making 875 coming out of turn
spinning
4.
out third members out the back.
It would be spinning across the track. So anyway, at the end of the day, we worked it pretty good, and then we just drove it around. Part of the, I think, 20 hours of that program was just driving it around.
What was
just
it in?
Nothing.
Oh, in the
just on
dyno cell.
We wrote the program on the dyno. So our dyno is fully automated. There's no handle, which
You don't have
took
like
a long time
you don't
for
have
me
like
to
a
get used to.
screen and a steering wheel and a pedal.
No.
And your guy can
No.
sit here and just drive all day.
No, you can drive it around with the two knobs on the dyno. You know, our dyno operators listening to us, they'll be like, "Oh, drive it around." I know what that means. But we actually wrote the programming, so it had no human had to really do it. We put the drag racing hits on it. Then we changed the programming to autocross. Then we switched it to, hey, we're just going to drive it around, right? So it was
Turbocharged or naturally
no,
aspirated?
this was a Whipple. We did a
Whipple blower,
3-liter Whipple on there.
Supercharger, yep.
Yeah, the big one had not come out yet. We were just behind when that new, I think it's a 3.5.
Yeah, I think this is a 2.9 you used or something like that,
I
or
think it was a
3.
No, it was a 3.
3.
We have a
Yeah,
Gen 5 3.8 on Lockjaw.
Okay.
And he's coming out with a 4.
4, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So you probably had it was a 2.9 or a 3.0 and then the 3.8.
And it had a intercooler built in. Right.
That's correct, right under it.
As they do, great piece. And that's what we used. So it was a Whipple supercharged LS3.
Makes some good noise too.
They do sound
I hope
cool.
you made some recordings of that for your
We've
social.
got a pile of video out there that you can actually look at
Awesome.
what we actually did to build it, all the different parts and pieces. We put all pretty high end stuff in it because we didn't want to break it because at the end of the day, it was a learning experience for us to get to that horsepower level and do what we were doing to it. So you understand that the crank wants to play jump rope sometimes in there. On an LS specifically supercharged, you're going to front bearing and LSs are center supported. So that crank wants to start playing jump rope, as we call it, right? You guys know this.
Yep.
And it starts rubbing up some of the bearings. So you have to build your tolerances properly, use the right viscometrics in the oil.
What
to
oil
get a
did you
clean-
use?
To get a clean looking bearing.
Was it
We
race oil or
actually
did you
used
Signature Series?
We
Or?
used 1550 Dominator racing oil on
Okay.
this thing because of the way the engine came together
Yeah.
and what it was showing us. It needed to have the high-end stuff.
Can I ask you a question that no one, we've talked to you guys all day long, and I don't know how the OE comes up with the original oil spec or how you, as you kind of built this engine from scratch, how you decide on these things. How do you even know? Or is it because you've already built hundreds? Like, if you built one engine from scratch, you were going to design an engine land right here at a billet. No one's ever done it. 3-cylinder, like something weird, whatever. How do you decide what oil you're going to start with? Like, what determines that? Because we just go, oh, the OE said 530. How did they come up with 530?
Bearing clearances, generally speaking, right? Any engine builder is going to tell you that. And bearing clearances a lot of times, and then horsepower levels will start to dictate a little bit, but usually bearing clearances, oil flow rates will start to dictate what viscosity that you want it to be at. So this was a 3.5 to 4 thou on the mains. We might have been 2.5 on the rods on this LS that we're talking about. And at that point, it was a 50 weight to keep the film alive, so we didn't want the parts to touch, right? You don't even want them to get close. So you start seeing that on the bearings. And in most vehicles, that would be fine, but we were going to show it to people, so we wanted to make sure it needs to be straight.
Here's pictures of our bearings after. Don't mind the other side; they were touching things.
Yeah. Don't worry about that center and that front. It's because the supercharger pulley pulls up. So I don't want to have to explain that. So we built the thing properly, and then that's why we went with a 50 weight. But tolerances, generally speaking, sets your baseline. Block construction, if it's aluminum, it's going to move a lot more. You'll see those things run really thin tolerances because they're so tight when you start them, and then they expand. So it's usually engine tolerances will get the path set. Then we can always adjust from there based on testing. Got it.
One last question for you. So it's been kind of a big deal. We thought it was a big deal. AMSOIL has come out with oil change kits on the truck side. So that's funnel, nitrile gloves, even the sticker, whatever oil that you're using in the filter. But my understanding is you started that on the power sport side.
We did, right. Okay. So the first ones that we did here at AMSOIL, believe it or not, it was the HD kits. So the V-twin, it was a V-twin kit.
Okay.
We know who HD is.
Yeah.
So we started there, and the reason I pitched that was they didn't have one at the time. So we thought, well, this might be a good idea because you could start to see that shift, right? People just want to, it's nothing technologically great. It's just super easy.
One-stop shop.
It's just super easy.
You don't want to have to buy your oil one place and
Right.
your glove somewhere else, and your oil filter somewhere else.
Yeah.
You can do it because of your distribution. Boom, it's here at your house tomorrow. And It's oil change in a box. Everything you need.
And if you want to test that, you should test it on a competitor that doesn't currently have one, that it's a very, very good product for us. So our 20W50 V-twin motorcycle oil is a very, very good product. It's got known history, so we tried it there. So we put it in the HD, or we put it in that, and it just went crazy. So we've been building kits ever since. And the OEMs, of course, this isn't new. They've been doing this for a while. And now we just continue to build, and we're just trying to provide to the customer something really easy. Here's everything you need. Do it at home. It's not that scary. That was really the key thing.
That's great. Congratulations. I'm so happy that they're giving you a commission on every kit sold.
That's correct. Right. I got to go buy a Porsche.
Professor Len Groom, thank you. Thank you for all that. There's some good nuggets in there that I think people will find really interesting. So we appreciate your time.
You're going to figure you edit me down to about 15 seconds total here?
Well,
all of you. We left it all in.
Yeah, all of it.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's fun. I like talking to you guys.
You look good on audio, too, I got to tell you.
I got a face for audio.
So do we.
Holman, it's funny that Holly has been kind of shadowing us the whole day just to make sure that we don't say anything like
I don't.
that
Where
could
is
get
she?
her in trouble. Well, she's down at the very end of the
in
conference
the orange
room
vest.
table.
Yeah, I
That's
hadn't
her.
noticed her following us all day in the shadows.
It's so funny. It's
love
like we're
Holly.
with Tom Cruise and Pamela Cates from PMK.
Nobody knows that
It's
reference.
It's a PR Hollywood reference, and she's
Nobody
following him around to
understands
make
the
sure he
reference.
doesn't, that Tom Cruise doesn't do anything wacky or anything like he did on Oprah.
So basically, she's here to make sure you don't jump on the AMSOIL couch.
I mean, pretty much, yes. All right, so now we're in the conference room. I feel like official. Who are we with, and what do you do?
I'm Alex Thompson. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for the Automotive Group at AMSOIL.
You talked about long titles. That's
Yeah,
the longest
geez.
so far.
So you're the most important. You run the company?
I wish.
Now, we were talking earlier about the new car care product lines. Does that fall under your purview?
It does, yep.
And probably all the other products that Holly likes to send us from time to time to check out. Are those all your babies?
The majority of them probably are.
Okay. So what's your favorite out of all the new products that you've had lately? Is there one that you're like, you know what, we killed it on that one, and everybody needs to have it. Everybody needs to use it.
Well, we kill it on every product launch. That we
Good
do around
answer.
here,
But that being said, it's completely already understood. What's
Which one is your favorite?
I would say that my most exciting product launch in the last year has been our car care line, just because it's been something completely different for us.
Did your both consumers and your retailers see it coming, or did you just drop a bomb and go, guess what we have?
We dropped the bomb on them. Yeah, it was a complete secret, and we decided that we would come out with some of the most popular products to start, and we look forward to expanding that line in the future.
And if you use a foam cannon, it's like spraying your car with shaving cream.
Absolutely.
Your
Yep.
soap. It's awesome.
Let's talk about that. When you look at launching a new line like that, I mean, you've obviously AMSOIL is one of the, if not the most respected name in lubricants. How do you kind of stand on the shoulders of this giant and launch this new line, right? Because it has to stand up to the AMSOIL name.
Well, first and foremost, it's just starting with the end goal in mind and understanding who we are and our target customers. So we do a lot of primary and secondary research at AMSOIL, so we're really identifying our target market and who consumes our products. We also look at the broader market too and say, well, lubricants is a place that AMSOIL has played in for over 50 years now. What are some adjacent markets that make sense? AMSOIL has a few other products that you may or may not be aware of, like gun lubricant or...
Oh, I'm aware.
We're very aware.
And I use it. And it's fantastic.
So where there's still a lubricant element to it, and a lot of people don't understand that products like car shampoo or car soap, it has a lubricating factor to it. And having these products really lets us take that protection that you're putting on the inside of your engine and bring it to the outside exterior of your vehicle, or we also have some interior products as well.
And so you do have interior, and you also have some ceramics. And that feels like something that, although you have incredibly skilled chemical engineers upstairs, like that may not be what they're used to playing with. So how do you pitch this idea?
Very carefully. So it is some new muscles. However, there's a lot of products out in the marketplace that we could really learn from and develop truly a unique solution that lives up to the AMSOIL name, both in quality and performance.
So what you're saying is you basically go out and buy some popular brands and benchmark them and say, here's the minimum we can get away with doing, and then we're going to go up to the AMSOIL standard.
Absolutely. Yep. We've tested just about every brand you can think of and we take that as our benchmark and go from there.
What are the current lineup of car care products right now?
Right now, AMSOIL has high foam car shampoo, which can be used in both foam cannon, foam gun, and bucket wash, traditional bucket wash applications. We have a ceramic spray product, which is an after wash product. It is going to provide that sacrificial layer of protection to your clear coat, your paint. It'll enhance the gloss. It'll make your bugs and stuff not stick to the front of your car as much. It'll reduce your drying time on your future washes. And then we also have 2 interior cleaner products. One is no scent, and the other one has a nice lemon scent to it, so that we have the exterior and interior of your car covered.
I will say that after having used because the first car that got dirty at my house was my kid's 2016 Scion TC. Just talked about it in the last segment. And we used the ceramic spray on. And it normally was getting dirty because it sits right outside of the house under a tree. And it luckily it doesn't sap, but it's got just the dust and the leaves and all that stuff. And in a week, it would be filthy. We went 3 weeks after spraying it, 3 weeks, because the dust was not adhering the way it normally does into the porous paint. And we are meticulous about waxing these cars. That spray, it behaved very differently.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is one of the unique factors of our products or components of our products, is that it is anti-static. So it will not attract pollen, dust, or any other light airborne contaminants.
It's weird because my wife, she does the grass cutting. Maybe I shouldn't say that because it's embarrassing, but she does all the yard work because she enjoys it.
Does she also pull up the bollards?
No, she won't do that. I have to do the bollards. He doesn't know about that, so don't tell him.
I know all about
that.
44 million views on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. Everybody knows about him.
So then, she's always doing the lawn. She does it sometimes twice a week just because she enjoys it, and it throws up a lot of dust. And the cars are dirty instantly. And I remember standing out there with her. It was Sunday afternoon. I go, isn't Quinn's car normally dirty by now? She goes, yeah, why? I go, look. She goes, what's different? I go, we sprayed it with this AMSOIL ceramic coating. I was like, It was just like one of those moments.
That's what we like to hear. Yeah.
Look at that. Customer feedback right here live on the Truck Show podcast.
Yeah. And that's another way we collect information, is just testimonials and listening to our customers. So.
Let's pivot over to the consumer oil line. And obviously you guys have a complete lineup of all sorts of different things: high mileage, hybrid, new car, old car, CVT, European, transaxle, transmit. I mean, on and on and on. You guys have a complete everything you need. But one of the questions that Lightning and I had is when it came to what oil does. I've got a Wrangler 392 normally aspirated. He's got a TRX, but he also has a Mercedes supercharged V8 SL. And we were having this discussion one day of hey, which AMSOIL do we use? It was I've got this Signature Series. And so I said, but is it the European you're using on the? No, I got the regular, the TRX will be fine, the Mercedes. And then he got to think, he's like, well, wait a minute, I don't know. So he called Mark, and Mark said, no, you should use the European on the Mercedes because there is a difference. So what does AMSOIL say? What is the difference between those, and how would they be used differently? They're the same viscosity. And so we're like, man, there's almost too many choices. How do we know the right one for our vehicles?
Yeah, I think you guys are probably catching on that our slogan now is specialized lubricants formulated for what you drive and how you drive. And that really is the reality, is that there are specialized formulas based on engine type, vehicle type, and just general application. So when this particular example, we look at a TRX versus a supercharged Mercedes. Yes, they take the same viscosity. However, the additive package that's in that oil is completely different. And when we look at European vehicles in particular, their emission systems are built completely different than your traditional domestic vehicle. And so you really want to make sure that you're using a European oil in a European vehicle so that you don't poison your emission system.
Interesting. I didn't expect that as the answer because, again, you have a supercharged V8 in the TRX and a supercharged V8 in the Mercedes, and you go, they're so similar. But it's not really the engine we're worried about. It's the after-treatment systems.
That's correct. Yep. The bearing clearances are likely going to be very close to each other, which is why it was speccing a 5W30. But the after-treatment requirements are drastically different.
And what happens if I use the wrong additive package
The world
in the
ends.
Mercedes?
The world ends.
No, legit. Am I?
No, that's it. That's it. It's
the world
biblical
ends?
times.
We all die.
That's it. Don't do it. Make sure you're using the right AMSOIL and the right engine.
seems-
Yeah, 4
seems
horsepower. That's
drastic.
right. It is drastic. That's why they put on the label European. That way you know.
But I mean, is this something that happens? Does something happen in 5,000 miles, in 1,000 miles, in 30,000 miles? Like what?
It depends on driving conditions. It's not going to happen immediately, but it will shorten the lifespan of your after-treatment systems. And those are very expensive to replace, especially on Mercedes, BMW.
Talking about like
If you had,
catalytic converter?
let's say you had a Mercedes that no longer or had surgery that relieved it of its after treatment system. Not that we know anybody like that, but then are those oils interchangeable at that point? This is for science. This is completely for science. I'm just saying that if you were
These
to
are
own that,
hypotheticals.
hypothetically, you lost your after treatment of the emissions on the Mercedes, would you still use the European oil?
That's a great question.
He's not going to answer.
I plead the fifth on that. No, in all honesty, if it's a modified application, you do have a lot more flexibility with your oil choice. And you mainly want to focus on having the right viscosity at that point. So I wouldn't vary going outside of a 5W30, but your options do certainly expand once you eliminate
So
after treatment.
let's look at your OE line versus your Signature Series line. And what's the difference? Obviously, the price point's different. There's probably a slightly different target of customer. But what do you get if I'm sitting there and I'm saying, oh, you know what? I'm listening to this show. I love the idea of AMSOIL. I'm going to buy you're at the checkout with your cart, and you're like, do I go OE or do I go Signature? What is a customer getting with OE, and then what more do you get with the Signature?
Or do I actually throw one more at you and say the high mileage?
Sure. Again, we have specialized products for specialized applications. So with OE, you're getting an API licensed product, which means it's gone through all of the certification processes, and it follows the rules, let's say. There you're guaranteed to have excellent protection. Even AMSOIL pushes those limits on our OE products to stay within licensing, but be at the very high end of those licensing requirements. So you're still getting one of the best synthetic lubricants out there, but you're getting it at that lower price point. OE is a great product for commuters and for people who really need a quality product or prefer quality product, but aren't necessarily beating their vehicle or taking it to severe service a lot. For high mileage, that product was custom formulated with boosted detergents in it and dispersants. So for engines that have more than 75,000 miles on it, they've had some time on the clock, they're accumulating deposits. We want to rejuvenate that engine, clean up those deposits, and
Pass them on to the filter.
And carry them to the filter. That's what the dispersant's job is. I'm sure the lab walked you through some of that, but the detergent cleans, the dispersant carries to the filter. That way you don't have agglomerations where you don't want them. So that's one of the main points of high mileage. Additionally, with high mileage, because it has such a boosted additive package, it does carry a longer drain interval than OE by 2,000 miles. So
would you use high mileage going forward, or could you use that for a couple oil changes, get your engine cleaned up, and then go to OE after that? Or once you stay within a certain oil, it's good to just stay with that?
Yeah, so they're all compatible with each other. The technologies we use are also compatible with competitor products too. So when you want to switch from those other brands to AMSOIL, it's real easy.
You don't have to flush or anything like that.
No, you don't have to, but AMSOIL does have a flush. If you are concerned or you have an unknown maintenance history, you can certainly throw a bottle of flush in there and just accelerate that cleaning process. But to answer your question, once you switch to high mileage, there's other benefits to high mileage too. It's built a little bit heavier on the viscosity side, still staying within grade. As engines age, they get a little looser, so there's some benefits there as well. So I would recommend sticking with high mileage or Signature Series after the fact. But again, all of our products are compatible, so you can switch between.
And then going back to Signature Series, I'm looking at OE. I might be going up to Signature Series. What's the benefit of going to that price class?
So Signature Series is the best oil that has ever been developed, and that's no joke.
Bar none. Look at that.
No joke.
Man, that's confidence right there. Wow, shots fired. All right.
He's in the bull ring with the red
Yeah.
cape going, I dare you.
I welcome that challenge. Yes,
Okay.
a Signature Series is the most overbuilt oil. It will handle anything that you throw at it. As a lot of our product testing shows on our website, you can see the proof. We've subjected it to 100,000 mile tests. Bearings still look brand new. We've taken industry standard tests and we've doubled the length of them, or we've increased the severity of them, and you'll still see that our product blows the doors off of the standard requirements. So Signature Series really, I mean, even up to and surpassing 1,000 horsepower applications, you're not making it sweat at all. It's a really well-built, durable product, and it also carries a service interval of 25,000 miles. If you're looking for that once-a-year oil change or even
stuff.
longer, that's the best stuff we've got.
I think I want to put it in my kid's CRV because she's just starting driving, so she's not going to drive a lot. I think that's probably the easiest. Once a year, throw that in and not have to worry about it.
Absolutely.
Along with the CVT transmission fluid, too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Signature Series is really built for the automotive enthusiast, but I do hear from a lot of dads who are sending their daughters off to college that they like Signature Series because they know their daughter's not going to change the oil.
Exactly.
There's a lot of sons today, by the way, Gen Z. They ain't gonna freaking
that's
change it
going
either.
in my head too. So
Sucks.
you had brought up on OE has the API rating on it, and I know as you go up to, let's say, Signature Series, it doesn't necessarily have that stamp on it, but it's important to know you test to exceed all of those standards. So your bottle may say compatible with these standards and then list whatever the different manufacturers are. But I've been in forums and stuff, and people ask the question, oh, but they don't have the certification stamp. Right. That's because you've chosen to formulate it the way that you want to formulate it. You know it exceeds those. You build it to exceed, though. And really, it's like on that product, it's going to the enthusiast, not the commodity buyer. So we're not going to pay to have it go through the process, even though it exceeds all those standards.
Signature Series is tested to the industry standards, but the industry standards do box you in. And so even when we look at high mileage is an API licensed product. But when we formulate, we boost to the absolute highest levels to stay within in the performance parameters we're looking for. When it comes to products like Signature Series, no holds barred.
You don't want any constraints on fitting in that box.
So,
that doesn't mean the oil's lesser. In fact, it means the oil's better, and you guys are actively, internally, third-party certifying it. It just doesn't have an API stamp because you want to do it the way you want to do it. And I just think that's an important distinction because there are people who don't understand that or have asked that question before, and I try to explain it. But getting it from the horse's mouth at AMSOIL is probably worthwhile.
Yeah, there's a big difference between avoiding API licensing because you're putting out a poor product and then avoiding licensing because your product is just so good it can't be licensed.
In addition to your high mileage and your Signature Series and diesel and everything else, you also make lubricants or motor oils for classic cars. And how does that product offering differ?
And we were talking earlier how new vehicles require synthetics from the factory, yet you have these old vehicles that are almost like you don't want them to have synthetics because a lot of the other products that are out there don't have high enough zinc, or these old engines that don't have as tight of tolerances don't necessarily need that. So how do you formulate a synthetic oil for the classic car crowd?
Yeah, so it's a common misconception that synthetics can be used in or can't be used in classic cars. AMSOIL disproved that with our first motor oil back in '72. So AMSOIL takes a full synthetic approach to our classic car motor oil line, which is called our Z-Rod series. It's called Z-Rod because of its boosted zinc content. So it's primarily designed for vehicles 1980 older and for vehicles pre-catalytic converter. And it provides that extra zinc boost for those flat tappet cams.
And you don't want that extra zinc going into the catalytic converters because it'll
Yeah, so
them.
basically oil formulations changed when the emissions requirements came online, and that's sort of the difference. It's not necessarily that the vehicles have changed all that much. It's the after treatment that you're sort of solving for. But when they went away from zinc to protect the catalytic converter, you lost some of the properties that those older vehicles love to. As Len said, the engine loves to eat, right?
Yeah, zinc was a great sacrificial product for those older engines. And it's not that today's engine oils are any weaker. In fact, they're much stronger than they once were, but the zinc has been replaced with other materials that provide the wear protection that's required in modern engines.
Okay, so it's been said by several people under this roof that they have been influential in the new kits that have recently launched. And word in this room is that you're the man behind the fill kits. Is that true?
We have a great team here at AMSOIL. I don't take credit for the entire team. No, we did focus a lot of effort here over the last year on improving our customers' experience with AMSOIL. Our product is second to none, but we really wanted to improve the experience as well. So we took a hard look at the oil change experience with AMSOIL, and we wanted to make some improvements or some enhancements. And so recently what we've started doing is including with every oil change kit purchased from AMSOIL.com, you will receive a funnel, a pair of gloves, and a oil change reminder sticker with every oil change kit to help you not only complete the oil change process, but also remind you when the next change is due, and just help out that DIY customer, because that's one thing that a lot of people don't think of when they change their own oil is, I don't get the sticker anymore from the dealership or from the quick lube that tells me when I'm due. Now, a lot of newer vehicles, of course, have the
Reminders,
reminder. Yeah. But when you're using products like AMSOIL that have a 25,000 mile service interval, your computer in your car doesn't correlate with
Don't
the
even
oil
worry about that
recommendation.
light.
Yes.
It doesn't even mean anything anymore.
So
We got to reset it.
Yeah, when you go in and keep resetting that light, it doesn't necessarily
you get
correlate.
5 resets with Signature Series.
So, and we do have some more improvements planned here over the next couple months here that we think are really going to help improve our customers' experience with our products.
So my day job is working at Banks, so I work for Gale Banks. I don't know if you knew that or not, but we sell a rear differential, and as you know, that we were very proud a few years ago to team up with AMSOIL to offer 75W90, full synthetic gear oil, 75-140, but they're in the easy packs. And we have introduced hundreds and hundreds of customers to the AMSOIL easy packs. We were new to them, but we didn't know quite how convenient they were when we signed up. We're like, we love the oil that's in the pack, but we hadn't used the packs themselves.
Let me help out here, because I
And
feel like Jay's
I'm
going on
telling
this
you-
very long story. What he's really asking you for is he realizes those packs are like upsized apple juices for a kid, and he wants you to make them with beer in them.
No, that's not where I was going with this.
Are you sure?
I was just going
Because
to
that would be. Think about how easy it would be for you to drink beer. You wouldn't have to carry that bulky can around. You could just cut the top off a cap. And,
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, no, I wasn't going there.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't. I did have beer on the mind, but that's for later. I was just going to pay you a very long compliment because they're incredibly handy, and all the mechanics at work love them. They're like, how did we do rear diff fills before Easy Packs? And it's crazy.
Well, they're nice and clean for the do-it-yourselfer who doesn't have a lift.
Because I'm telling you, they're so handy.
I was lucky enough to be on the development team for the Easy Pack originally when we launched it in 2016, and we really did have the DIY consumer in mind. We knew that the gear oil pumps that you put in the
horrible.
rigid bottles.
And then once you're done using them, they're still full of gear oil. You got to clean them. You put them on the shelf, or they fall on your floor, and then like spider webs and dirt from your garage floor gets stuck to them. And then you instead of cleaning them, you just go buy another one the next time you do gear oil, and it's like all of that is completely done away with, because all you can do is cut off the nipple, open my deal, pour it in. I mean, it's so simple. It's so
who was
clean.
doing who was brushing their teeth in the morning and was squeezing out the last bit of toothpaste and said, I have an idea. I'm going to put oil in one of these.
That'd be Matt Erickson, our vice president of product development. Yeah, it really did come down to the hassle factor with pumps, and the fact that the consumer who is changing their own differential fluid is also likely the person who's changing their own transmission fluid. And then you have the opportunity for contamination between the two if you were to use the same pump, or you're buying multiple pumps and you're changing that pump from bottle to bottle to bottle, and it's just a complete mess. So we sat down one day and we're really thinking, how do we make that process easier? Similar to our oil change kit, how do we make the process easier? And it really came down to, how do we build the pump into the package? And the simplest way to do it is make it a flexible package.
And the pump is your hands now.
The pump is now your hand. Yep. And so we're continually expanding our product offering in easy packs. They've been a huge success in the market for us. and they are very tough pouches. We've gone as far as parking 4-wheelers on them to test if they could be run over by a car.
All you have to do is put them through the UPS process and start shipping them around the country, because those UPS guys will drop kick them onto front yard, onto doorsteps. And we've sent thousands around the country, and they've been incredible.
Yeah, we like to say that everything around here ships air freight, because whether it goes UPS or otherwise, it
goes
going
through the
airborne
air,
at some point.
Exactly.
Well, congratulations on the product line and the fact that it keeps growing, and the fact that your existing customers love it and newbies are adopting it every day. So that's a huge testament to you and your work.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for having us out. All right, Lightning, that was more information than I think I could possibly...
Yep. Hold on.
You're laying down in front of AMSOIL?
I'm laying down. I can't stand any longer.
I'm going to tell you, I'm
just
just
great,
happy.
but I'm just so tired.
I'm just happy that we recorded our entire experience, because I can't remember all of it. There's just too much.
We're going to have to go back like posthumously and listen to it. And is that what you do? Is it posthumously? Is that the right word?
Only if you're going to lay on the ground forever and never get up.
You're taking a photograph of me right now laying in front of AMSOIL? Really?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Don't kick me in the nuts. Stop it. All right, let's thank, we thanked AMSOIL. Let's thank Nissan, Banks, and EGR. You're first.
Well, we definitely have to thank AMSOIL, because it was a lot of effort that they put into having us going around all their heavy machinery and their manufacturing plant. So
they did trust us with their orange jackets. Yes,
that's true. You tried to steal one at the end of the day. And, of course, we also have to thank our presenting sponsor, Nissan. The Truck Show Podcast is brought to you by Nissan. And if you are looking for a new mid-size truck or a full-size SUV, you can check out the Nissan Frontier or the Nissan Armada. Head on over to nissanusa.com, and you can build and price your vehicle and find out all the features that fit your lifestyle, or head on down to your local dealer for a test drive.
And I'm going to deliver this read laying down on the ground in front of the AMSOIL front door.
Are you that worn out?
Now, I am totally worn out. Oh, you're dragging the box, dude. Hang tight. What are you doing there? All right, so listen, when you're at bankspower.com and you're searching for your Duramax parts, and you come across the Cool Runner oil pan, you're like, what is this? I can buy an oil pan that will cool my motor oil, and I get to buy AMSOIL with it? This is the greatest day ever. That's what you're going to say. And then your mind is going to be blown when you discover the Ram Air Transpan, that you can get AMSOIL ATF with it. What? Head over to bankspower.com to buy your oil and transpans with AMSOIL.
And we have to thank our friends over at EGR, who want you to know that they make some of the highest quality, best truck accessories for your ride. You can head on over to egrusa.com, whether you need fender flares or hood guards, or even one of the best tonneau covers on the market in the roll track. egrusa.com.
Does that mean I have to get up now?
Only if you want to ride to the airport.
Yeah, I'll get up. Thanks, AMSOIL. The Truck Show Podcast is a production of Truck Famous LLC. This podcast was created by Sean Holman and Jay Tillis, with production elements by DJ Omar Khan. If you like what you've heard, please open your Apple Podcast or Spotify app and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're a fan, there's no better way to show your support than by patronizing our sponsors. Some vehicles may have been harmed during the making of this podcast.